Hello, and welcome to Physical Format Rock and Roll. I'm your host, Gary. This is a place where we talk about all things rock and roll and classic metal. Thank you for tuning in. Tonight will be an episode of Album Fight. So I like to pick two albums that have something in common somehow, or maybe two albums by the same band that are somewhat similar, and go over them, talk about them a little bit, and then at the end, pick one of them. Who wins the fight? So tonight, we go back to the glorious year of 1983. We've got two albums that were kind of known. This was debut albums, okay, by these two bands. So they were two new bands. And the tagline on these albums were that they sound somewhat like Led Zeppelin. And they were two sides of Led Zeppelin. It's kind of when you would see a review of these albums, it seemed like you would see one and then you would see the other, and they might review them at the same time. One band was kind of the more symphonic type side of Led Zeppelin, and the other was like the early stages of Led Zeppelin, the more harder edge of it. So to start it off, we have the debut album from Zebra. All right. Zebra was a three-piece band. They had actually been together for quite a few years before their debut album ever came out. So this came out in March of 1983, and it was produced by Jack Douglas. So they already got a well-known name to work with him on the debut album. It's a good sounding album. The drums sound good. The guitar, the keyboards. It's a three-piece band led by Randy Jackson. Randy Jackson, not the one Randy Jackson you're thinking of, different one. But he's the leader of the band. He plays guitar, he writes the songs, and he sings. So he's kind of your main guy in this band. Filling the rest of the band out is Felix Hanneman, who plays bass and the keyboards, and Guy Gelso, who is the drummer. Now this band, this album is the one that is the more, I don't know, cashmere kind of style of Led Zeppelin. Not all of it, but quite a lot of it is. It was, as far as hits on the album, it had Who's Behind the Door and Tell Me What You Want. You can see I still got the plastic and the sticker. What's that price? It was $7.79 back when I bought this in 1983. So it was a little bit cheaper back then. Those were the two hits. They weren't big hits, but they were FM hits. You would hear them on the radio there for a while. Both good songs. The album itself is a very strong album. It's got a lot of good songs on here. A little bit on the progressive rock sound at times. Also, Take Your Fingers From My Hair was kind of, I think it was played on the radio maybe a little bit. That's one of those songs that's slow and then it builds up as it goes along. So, good sounding record. A lot of good songs. Randy Jackson kind of goes into this falsetto, this real high falsetto that he has on some of the songs, which to me, when he goes into that, it actually sounds more like Geddy Lee than it does Robert Plant from Led Zeppelin. So I don't know that I agree with all the Led Zeppelin comparisons, but I totally get it. Next, who will be the competition? Well, now we have an album that was released in May of the same year. So these albums were just a couple months apart. And that would be the debut album from Fastway. I'm guessing that probably more of you out there have heard of Fastway than you have Zebra. But they came out at the same time. They were both becoming fairly popular at the time. And then they kind of faded out. They couldn't maintain that popularity. Neither band did, really. This band had a little bit of more of a hard rock pedigree to precede it. It had Fast Eddie Clarke from Motorhead, and it had Pete Way, of course, from UFO. The late, well, actually, Eddie Clarke and Pete Way, sadly, are both gone. But the thing about Pete Way and his involvement in this, even though that's how they got the name, Fast Eddie Clarke, Pete Way, Fastway. Pete Way was gone out of the band before it ever got going. He had some kind of legal obligations, some kind of record deal type thing where he was not allowed to work on this album. So he doesn't even play drums. They end up bass. They end up having a session drummer, a session bass player. I don't know why I keep saying this. A session guy plays bass, and he's not even credited on the album. His name escapes me at the moment. But the other notable name on here was Jerry Shirley, playing drums on that. He came from Humble Pie, is where he was most famous for. And the drums here are great. This is a smoking album. It's, for the most part, pretty, basic, simple rock. Just, hard rock, hard drums. The vocals were handled by Dave King. Dave King was an unknown at the time, an Irish guy, and he went on after he left this band. He got tired of the whole heavy metal thing, and he ended up forming a band called Flogging Molly, which some of you might be familiar with. It's not really my cup of tea. I've heard a few things that sound okay, but it's like an Irish rock band type thing. So he is still currently in that band. He's still going, but, he had didn't want anything to do with this in the later years. The hit off of this was Say What You Will. Got a lot of airplay on MTV. I remember they were playing that quite a lot. Didn't really have any other hits on it, but it's got just so many good songs. This is a top to bottom album. You can just play this from start to finish. Most of it they're just simple, up-tempo, hard rock songs, 3 minutes long. Except on side 1, you get the songs 4 and 5. Number 4 is called Another Day, and that starts out more like, one of those songs that starts out acoustic, it's real slow, then it, boom, comes in, and it's another hard rocking song. And then Heft, which finishes side 1, great song, just a real moody, heavy song. I love both those songs. Probably a couple of my favorite songs on the album. But really good album, right? Zebra, really good album. Two sides of the coin as far as the whole Led Zeppelin influence. I don't know, I'd be curious for you guys out there to hear some comments on what you think of these albums, if you've heard them. If you haven't heard them, I recommend both of them to you. These are both good albums. Go give them a listen. Try to seek them out and find them. I'm sure you can get either one of these at your local record store or Amazon, wherever you get records. I try to go to record stores when I can. But anyway, one of them has to win, right? They're both good albums, but it's going to be Fastway. All right? I've loved this album since I was a kid when I bought it, and I could put it on right now and still rock out to it. So Fastway is going to win tonight. Not to say anything bad about this. Love this album too, but this is just one of my favorite debut albums, Fastway. Fastway for the win tonight. So I really appreciate anybody that is tuned in to watch this. Any comments?